We have more for your ears only. I'm David Alpern.
I'm Catherine Herzog with this news quote. We are committed to reaching the right agreement, not a fast agreement. That was Gavin Sundwall, a spokesman for the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan, on delays in a strategic partnership deal. President Hamid Karzai is also calling for the American-led coalition to relinquish control over all remaining Afghan prisoners and only grudgingly accepting new allied efforts to negotiate with the Taliban. Now this.
Closing the Strait of Hormuz for the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran is very easy. It's a capability that's been built initially into our naval forces' abilities.
I think it reflects the fact that Iran is in a position of weakness. It's the latest round of Iranian threats, and it's confirmation that Tehran is under increasing pressure for its continued failures to live up to its international obligation.
The claim by Iranian Navy Commander Habibullah Sayari was backed up in recent days by fleet maneuvers, a cruise missile test firing, and Tehran's touting creation of its first nuclear fuel rod. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney saw it more as bluster than threat, especially since closing the Strait of Hormuz would block Iran's own vital oil exports, particularly to key ally China. Still, the threat of military confrontation with Iran seemed to many one of the year's top risks.
To put those prospects in perspective and review other risks in the year ahead, for your ears only, we're joined again by David Gordon, head of research at Eurasia Group, international risk consultants. Welcome back to our program.
Great to be here, David and Catherine.
First, tell us, what are the odds on a military confrontation with Iran over the Strait of Hormuz?
I think it's still a long shot. I don't think Iran really wants a confrontation. I think Iran is searching for a way to try to get traction with its goal to block increased sanctions, and it's turning to ever larger bluster, but it just isn't working, and I don't think they really want a confrontation now.
Does the claim of a nuclear fuel rod affect the odds on a strike by Israel or the U.S.?
That's a good question. I don't think there's a very large likelihood at all of a U.S. strike, but I think come later in the year, I think the odds of a military strike go up. I say later in the year because it's clear that this increase in financial pressure on Iran is getting some traction. The Israelis are going to want to give that a chance to work, see how it plays out.
Stepping back a bit, the report on top risks issued by Eurasia Group last week sees the Iran threat as part of a larger problem that you called G0 and the Middle East. Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we mean by the G0 is that the U.S. is both less willing and less able to give leadership to the world's various crises. I mean, you see this in the withdrawal from Iraq, the stepping back from Afghanistan. In the Middle East, this is coinciding with the Arab Spring that has, in effect, intensified regional conflicts, in particular the regional conflicts between the main Sunni Arab powers, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, and Shia Iran. And the focal point for this in 2012 is really going to be the trio of states, Syria, Iraq, and Iran itself. And we're seeing this civil war in Syria drawing in outside powers. In the aftermath of the U.S. withdrawal, it took literally a matter of days before you had a very sharp escalation in tension between Shia and Sunni. So this is a huge geostrategic risk out there. This interplay of Shia-Sunni tensions in a context where the outside world is playing less of a role, and very, very, very sharp internal divisions in Syria, in Iraq, and ultimately in Iran.
What are the prospects for Egypt, where Eurasia Group reports the triumph of Tahrir Square is being overshadowed by an emerging alliance between Islamists and the military?
Yeah, I mean, Egypt, the early months of the Egyptian revolution looked pretty positive, actually, and in recent months, I think it's quite clear now that the military does not really want to walk away from effective control, but that civilians definitely are committed to that. So you are seeing a reemergence of some of the kinds of tensions we saw just before the downfall of Hosni Mubarak. Egypt is still by far the largest country in the Middle East. Should it return to civil conflict, this is really negative for stability all around the region.
What about the threat from Pakistan, nuclear armed with an increasing Islamic insurgency and more alienated than ever from Washington?
So this is the second area. This is the second geographic area where the end, the G0 and the end of the 9/11 world really play out in a negative way. And I think that President Obama in his address this week highlighted the theme that we made in our report that came out earlier, that this is really the end of the 9/11 era. Overall, that's a good thing for the world. The U.S. is safer, Europe is safer, but for South Asia, it's creating a nightmare. As we head into the end game in Afghanistan, there's all sorts of tension between the U.S. and Pakistan, the U.S. and Afghanistan. The Indians don't know what to do. Pakistan is seeing heightened conflict between the civilian authorities and the military. The economy is trending downward very rapidly, and extremists are expanding their influence all through the country. And the relationship with the United States has not come near touching bottom.
Also nuclear-armed, economically dysfunctional, and undergoing a leadership change is North Korea. How do you assess the threat there?
Yeah, this is really by far the most secretive country in the world. And its economy has been going downhill for 6 decades. It's a nuclear power. We do know that authoritarian familial oligarchies are at the most risk at the time of transition from one generation to the other. Kim Jong-il died unexpectedly. The new leader, who turns 29 today or tomorrow, is untested. So the danger here, of course, is that if things really go downhill, tensions between North and South Korea increase. North Korea has 10,000 ballistic missiles targeted on Seoul, and if things really fall apart, the U.S. and South Korean forces will move north to secure the nuclear facilities. Chinese military forces will move in to secure the country because they don't want to have millions and millions of people crossing the border into China. And we really haven't had any contingency planning with the Chinese on what to do about this, even though I don't think our interests fundamentally collide here.
David Gordon is head of research at Eurasia Group, International Risk Consultants.
Next, musical exports and imports for your ears only.